Welcome to day 3, Homes with a Heart, 21st Century Caregiving.
Hi again, my name is Jennifer and I'm from Kids and Families Together. I work as a clinician there. And today is a very powerful day in the 5-day class. Today you're going to listen to a Ventura County Office of Education professional, and they're going to talk to you about everything the child's enduring in their educational process and where you fit in, with especially a highlight on trauma and how it is exposed in the classroom. What does that look like? And then what does it look like on the paper side as far as who has the rights to the child's file? So it's incredibly important. And then we're going to transition after that to the most powerful part of the 5 days, which is listening in to a panel of folks who have experienced the system from all different angles. So you're going to hear from a child who may or may not have aged out of the system in maybe various ages. And then you're going to hear from someone like yourself, a resource family, and what their experience has been like. And then you're also going to hear from a parent who was reunified with their child. So for whatever reason of why that child was put into the system and what the biological parent's experience was to get their child back. And what we hope you gain from this experience and from listening to them is that it's a well-rounded, thought-out panel to really start applying what we're teaching you to their stories, but really just listening without judgment about all 3 different experiences and perspective. And it puts together that whole team effort. What did each child, what did each adult go through? Where do you see yourself in that process? And what can we learn from maybe some mistakes that were done to their experience, or what was done really well? And what can we capitalize on there?
I'm Joanne with Kids and Families Together, and welcome to day 3 of the training. Jen told you a little bit about what the first couple pieces are going to be with our kind of guest speakers and panel. We're also going to have a little bit after the panel where we're going to be talking about transitions, how to prepare for transitions, and what might be some special considerations for kids who've experienced trauma and their ability to handle those transitions. We're going to be talking about our objectives for today. So we want to define foster children's educational rights and their importance in school success, review your responsibilities related to meeting that child's educational needs. We'll be looking at the importance of school stability for children in foster care and identifying some resources available both to the kids, to you guys, to biological parents. So that's the piece where we're going to have somebody from the Ventura County Office of Education. They will be presenting and talking about what that looks like in the classroom for kids with trauma, but also just what are some services and supports that are available for kids that are in foster care while they're in school. Then we will have the Homes of the Heart panel. We're going to have somebody who young adult who aged out of foster care as a child, a biological parent who reunified, and experienced resource family share their experiences, what worked well for them, what maybe didn't work so well, and hopefully that's something that will really be helpful for you guys. It is one of the most amazing parts of our class. And then the last little piece is going to be looking at transitions and what are some options for permanency.
Ventura County is home to more than 1,000 youth in out-of-home care, including foster homes, relative homes, and group homes. School stability is extraordinarily difficult for youth that experience life in foster care. We all have a responsibility to ensure that these youth have every opportunity to succeed in school and in life. As educators, teachers, and potential caregivers, there is more support than ever for youth in need. Our roles vary, but our goal is the same: that every youth is given the opportunity and the tools to meet their potential.
When I was 7 years old was the first time I ever got into the foster care system. I was about 3 hours into the class around noon, and this person comes into the room and says, come into the office. And I was scared. It was this lady just asking me a lot of questions. After that, we got into her vehicle and then drove 2 hours from where we were. When I got taken away that day, I pledged, I'm like, I'm gonna be a better kid, and I'm going to prove to these people, whoever they are, that I'm a good kid.
I was 7 years old when I was placed in foster care, and I remember just having trash bags full of clothes. And my little brother and sister were with me, and then the next day a man showed up with a big white van. My life never went back to the way it was. It was just scary, you know, having to start all over again with basically in 2 different areas in my life, with school and meeting new friends, and then adjusting to a whole new family, just leaving everything behind that you know.
Kids in foster care have been through a lot. They need a lot of support, and so we're really looking for caregivers that we can match with the kiddos to ensure that while they're in care, they're really getting what they need and are able to progress, grow, and develop in healthier ways. They need to know that their community, their teachers, their neighborhood is behind them in order for them to get better.
For me, when I work with students, I work with the whole child, and that doesn't mean just giving them backpacks, pencils, and paper. It's taking care of them as a human being.
I think the biggest part in the parents and teachers and their child when they're in foster care is praising them. You know, I'm proud of you. I know you can do it. I believe in you. You're intelligent, you're beautiful, you're smart. My mom and my dad, they've always made sure that they've given me words of praise like that, and it just makes me believe that I can do it because they believe in me and that my teachers believed in me.
The Ventura County Office of Education supports school districts, social workers, educators, foster families, ed rights holders, with the goal of providing the best possible education for foster youth throughout the county. In our department, we do trainings for new foster parents. We like to make sure that they're informed, of all the resources that are available to them, all the rights that their foster youth have.
So for foster parents, what we really ask of them is to raise a foster child as if it's their own child. So that means going to back to school night, that means helping with homework, that means helping with the 4th grade mission project or whatever it might be. We really want these families to be fully involved in the child's educational experience.
I've seen some really fantastic support from some of the school staff when the students are identified as foster youth, and there are dedicated individuals, faculty, counselors that can work with them. I've found that having that kind of one-on-one relationship has been something that's very helpful.
The new role we're taking is really just to make the big picture aware that that the important question is, if a youth is having trouble in school, the whys, what's going on with the youth, what have they been through, that brought them to this place in foster care.
I was taken out of my school district and placed in a school I didn't know anybody, and so it just kind of made it a little difficult to really focus on my schoolwork, and I didn't really have very strong support in high school.
Moving schools, the difficult part was switching curriculums, because I even to this day I feel that there are certain subjects that I'm just not good at just because of that movement.
So when children in foster care have to change schools, they lose anywhere between 3 to 6 months of academic progress. And so for kids that are likely already struggling in school, it really deepens the impact in terms of their academic progress and achievement.
AB 490 was the cornerstone legislation that was passed in 2004. It provided for sharing of information, which was probably the key. What it really did is it compelled probation, social workers, caretakers, advocates, educators to really work together to do the best they could to ensure that the education of the youth became the primary concern. But it includes school stability, words like best interest of the child in terms of school, school of origin, credit protection and grade protection for the youth that do transfer, immediate enrollment if the youth is forced to move. It established liaisons at all the school districts.
I work for Ventura Unified School District. I'm the Homeless and Foster Youth Family Liaison. My role, I believe, is one of making sure that when a foster youth is coming into our district, or leaving our district, that it is as least amount of stress for that student as possible.
School was always my haven. It was always the place where I could definitely know that everything was going to be okay. I'm learning, I'm having fun, I'm actually smiling. Staying at the same school assists because at a school you already have connections and you know who to go to if you need help. If you just detach someone from that setting, then you pretty much leave the kid all alone all over again.
Some kids say, you know what, no one in my family has graduated from high school, Joanne. And I think, wow. And I say, you know what, and you're going to be the first one, and you're going to have your diploma. And another protection that the students have is partial credits, so that if they've been moving around from school to school to school, they have the ability to get half a credit here and a point of a credit there, so that they're not losing all of that essential information and or having to go back and repeat themselves.
To actually graduate felt really nice because it felt like a week up until my graduation. I didn't know that I was actually going to be able to graduate with my class, and that gave me anxiety just because it's just like, why can't I go walk the line with my friends? And having my name during the rehearsal for graduation just made me feel so good, relieved. Without AB 216, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
The kids, when they change school, they lose those relationships, and during a time where they've already lost so much, their family, their home, possibly their siblings, it just adds to those losses and makes them feel even more insecure about who in their life is going to be able to look out for them and make sure that they're going to be okay.
I was not a child that made friends very easily, so my friends were my teachers, and I think that's why I've been able to connect with teachers the way I have, is because they were my go-to. I still talk to some of my elementary school teachers, my junior high teachers, and I have my Spanish teacher in high school that I had 3 years of Spanish with her. And we still talk to this day, and she was one of the most helpful people in persuading me to go to college.
Another barrier to success can be when they're getting to the point where they're thinking they might want to go to college. It's a big transition, and it's an entire new bureaucracy. So they're dealing with getting transcripts sent over, filling out forms, new documents that have to be produced, and filling out scholarship applications, filling out applications for school, trying to get meetings with the right people. It's a whole new ball game, and there's not always someone there for them to guide them.
Going from high school to college was a difficult change, but the program that helped me out was the EOP program at CSU Channel Islands. In my sophomore year at CSU Channel Islands, I was in the EOP office, and Leticia met with me one day, and she told me about this amazing program called PATH and how I should be in it because I was in the foster care system.
The Promoting Achievement Through Hope program at CSU Channel Islands, it's a support service program that supports foster youth, students that are in guardianship or kinship care, also students that were adopted, and students that have experienced homelessness.
The program provided me with a lot of resources that I didn't have, such as scholarships, even a laptop. That was a great one. Books, because books are expensive in college. And just a center to feel safe and secure, somewhere where you just can go and relax, not really think about anything, and that's what PATH provided.
Programs like PATH help students build connections within the campus community and outside of CI. I'm able to assess, what type of resources they're already receiving from the campus community or maybe outside of CI.
She actually was the first stepping stone for me in college because she made it seem like it wasn't going to be very hard at all, and I have a lot of support throughout the whole process of school. So I felt like she was like the opening door for me for college.
Education is definitely the foundation to a better life. because with that you gain a different perspective about life, and you gain experience on how to navigate throughout it.
I love the resiliency of foster youth. It's just amazing that you go through services staffings, or you see a youth that has been pulled out and is in an emergency shelter, and you hear the story, that is going on with them, and then you see them, and they continue to really just want to reach out. They continue to want to do well, and they continue to meet the challenges of the trauma that's going on in their lives.
The biggest internal thing was just that I'm going to prove everyone wrong, that I'm not going to mess up. I'm not going to just be another statistic that's not going to college because you're in the foster care system.
I think one of the most happiest moments in my life was when I was walking down that graduation line, because I knew there was a sense of accomplishment. I knew that I had made not only myself proud, but my parents. They were the most important things to me.
If you ask a youth, foster youth, they're not going to really remember lots of the programs they went through or the resources they got. They're really going to remember the adult that reached out to them and stayed with them.
Building that trust between the agencies is so important for the students. But by working together as a community, we can do amazing things for these kids. And I'm so glad that here in Ventura, we have that connection. We have everybody who's working together for the betterment of the child.
They say it takes a village to raise a child, and in no case is this more evident than in raising children in foster care. We are all responsible for ensuring our youth in foster care have the same opportunities to experience what most children take for granted: safety, love, nurturing, having their basic needs met, and the ability to grow into their potential.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Nye. I'm with the Ventura County Office of Education Special Populations Department. And today I'm going to be talking to you about promoting the educational rights and ensuring school stability for youth in foster care. Our department, Special Populations, serves foster youth, homeless students, students that are experience pregnancy while they're still in school, migrant education, as well as English language learners throughout our community. Our department serves the 21 school districts in Ventura County. The Foster Youth Coordinating Services Program consists of Laura Wellborn, Michelle Odiguera, and myself. During the COVID, we've been doing a lot of this remotely. So please, if you have any questions after our training today, feel free to call us at the number or email us at the address that you see on the screen. A child who's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This is an African proverb, and you are now part of that village. We need our children that are in foster care to understand that the case managers, the teachers, the counselors, their bio family, the social workers are all part of the village that are going to support them as they go through this traumatic time in their life. But remember that you are part of the village. So the first part of this presentation is kind of a little grim because several years ago, we actually got the data in the state of California about how youth in care were doing in the educational system. By having this baseline data, we're able to now start looking at our youth in care and how can we support them to have better educational outcomes. Here we see in 2018 and 19 that our foster youth were considerably behind in their standard testing results. Educational or English language arts, they only achieved 24% compared to 51% of our non-foster youth. And in mathematics, only 15% compared to 40% of the students were meeting or exceeding the standards in those education, in that testing. Students were chronically absent 28% of the time, compared to their non-foster peers, and their suspension rates were at 15% when their non-foster peers were at 3%. The 4-year cohort graduation rate shows that only 56% of our foster youth graduated from high school in the year 2018 to 2019. Now, a 4-year cohort graduation rate is based on a student starting their freshman year and graduating 4 years later with their peers in school. Many of our foster youth do go on to a 5th year to graduate, but in that 4-year cohort graduation rate, only 56% graduated. And we know that graduating from high school provides better economic outcomes for their students in the long run. Our foster youth also have shown that they are are more at risk than our other subgroups, the English language learners, the students that are living in low socioeconomic status. They still are performing more poorly than their peers. So now we're going to talk about trauma in education and how those students and the education system needs to look at and how we can support them. I know in your previous training, you talked a little bit about trauma, and you also talked about the brain development and the brain development of children that are in care and have experienced trauma. Here we have a demonstration or a picture of different parts of the brain. The amygdala, which is the blue and purple part of the brain in the picture, are considered the Frankenstein part of the brain. They're the part of the brain that are the here and the now. They're the part of the brain that results in your startle reflex. If somebody jumps behind a wall and surprises you and you startle, that's the amygdala part of the brain being activated. It's the part of the brain that is fight, flight, or freeze. And it's the part of the brain that protects you. It's the part of the brain that keeps your eyes blinking and your heart pumping and your taking breaths. It's your survival part of the brain. The limbic part of the brain, which is more the yellow and green part of the diagram, is the central part of the brain that stores all your memories, controls your emotions, and also brings up triggers. If you smell a perfume, it might remind you of your grandmother and give you a good feeling. But if you see fire on the hilltops and you had a traumatic experience of losing a household, it could trigger fear. That's triggering the amygdala part of the brain. And so when both the amygdala part of the brain and the limbic part of the brain are engaged, what they're doing is they're taking all the energy away from the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, which is that pink area, or the Einstein part of the brain. And that's the part of the brain that activates learning. That's the part of the brain that takes the academic knowledge that we work on in school. That's the part of the brain that makes you think and plan and consider consequences of your actions. That's the part of the brain that does the rational thinking and the logic part. So if the limbic part of the brain and the amygdala part of the brain are engaged and working to protect yourself from trauma or experiences that are harmful to you, you're not using the prefrontal cortex part of your brain, which means you're not engaged in learning and you're not using those to think about rational consequences of the actions that you might be doing. I'm going to review some statistics of students that are in care that have experienced trauma and how that affects their education. Children that are exposed to 4 or more traumatic experiences were 32 times more likely to have learning and behavioral problems than non-traumatized children. Maltreated children were more likely than their peers to have retained a grade, have irregular attendance, and be placed in special education classrooms. Children with high exposure to violence have lower grade point averages and more absences than children with less exposure to violence. Children with complex trauma are more likely to have early initiation of sexual activity or adolescent pregnancy. You can see that our children that are in care that have been exposed to trauma are going to have a lot harder time in their educational program. And it's important that everybody in the village understands that using trauma-informed care can help mitigate and help those children have better results in their educational program. Resilience. Resilience is the deep belief that at one time you really mattered to another being. And this quote comes from Vincent Folletti, who was one of the major doctors that did the ACEs study. And I know that was shared with you in your last training. The ACEs study looks at how traumatic events affect brain development and also affect the health of adults. In this ACEs study, adults with pretty significant health concerns could be traced back to traumatic experiences that they had as children, and was one of the leading studies that made educators, social workers, other people working with children look at their traumatic experiences and how that has affected them. So next we're going to talk about placement changes and inconsistency. And I know as you're becoming resource parents, you're looking at this and like, wow, a child in care could change placements at an average of 8 times. The other day I was at a training and a young girl was sharing that she had been in 32 placements in her lifetime from the age of 6 to 18. 32 placements. That's more than most military families travel, but average is about 8 times. Every time a child changed placements, often they change schools. And if they change schools, we're looking at 4 to 6 month loss of learning. The child has to build new relationships in their new home as well as at their school. If they're starting a school, even with the same curriculum, they could be at a different place in the curriculum. They could be before, they could be after, they could have a totally new curriculum, or they might be in a totally different class than they were. We're talking about elementary school kids through high school kids. And as we've shown before, the outcomes of these placements really impact how students are doing in the educational system. Every time a child goes into placement, if there have been some unique needs or some things that have been started to be addressed by the school district, those can get delayed. Assessments can get delayed. Understanding maybe some special education needs that the child has needs can be delayed. There's not somebody actively following the case if a child changed placement. Sometimes children change placement from county to county and the caseworker doesn't even always follow them. So we know that schools can often be the most consistent thing in a youth's lives. So one of the things we're really looking at is trying to keep children in the same school, if at all possible. Because we don't want to lose that, have those months of learning lost. This is one of the handouts that you should have been emailed, and it is all of the California foster care education laws. It was last updated in June 2019. The link at the bottom of this PowerPoint or the PDF that you were sent can take you immediately to it. I don't believe there have been many foster care laws changed from this publication in 2019, but if it is, we will be forwarding that information to all the social workers and share that with them. But this is definitely an area where you can look at all the laws that we're briefly touching that support youth in care. Educational rights holders. This is a big deal, especially for our resource families. The biological parents hold the educational rights unless a court limits or revoke those rights. The court can limit the educational rights of the biological parent if the parent is unwilling or unavailable to make the education decisions. But this has to be done by court. And oftentimes our resource families, we recommend that you find out from the social worker immediately upon placement of a child of school age who that educational rights holder is, because that's going to really impact your ability to work with the school district to support this child in their educational program. I'm going to share a little bit more about educational rights holders so you know who they are. For those of you that don't have children and haven't ever been in this situation, educational rights start at birth. We have children that have special education needs that are entitled to early start services at birth if they have a disability. So all youth have to have an educational rights holder. The educational rights holder have the right to written notice of and for making decisions regarding school enrollment, including transfers to alternative schools, a school of origin, high school graduation, which involves AB 167 and 216, special education, which involves the decisions of assessments and consenting to the IEP plan or the individual education program that's part of special education, and then early intervention regarding decisions for assessment and consenting to an individual family service plan that serves children from 0 to 3 that are deemed needing that early start services. Who can and can't be an educational rights holder? If the biological parent can't serve as the educational rights holder, the court can appoint any of the following: the resource family, a relative caregiver like the aunt or the grandparents, a court-appointed special advocate, or known as a CASA, or a community member that has a relationship with the youth. The following people are never to be educational rights holders: group home staff, case-carrying social workers, probation officers, or other people that are involved with the youth that are receiving pay to serve the youth. Because this is a conflict of interest, they're actually being paid to support the youth, and so they cannot be the educational rights holder of the child. We do have trainings annually for people in the community that are volunteering to be the educational rights holder for children that are in group homes, that don't have a close relationship with a non-paid adult that can support them in the educational decisions that need to be made. So let's talk a little bit how school stability can help. As we said before, it's one set of connections that remain stable. The connections with the peers, the connections with the teachers, the connections with the counselors and the staff. We're not looking in at any of that 4 to 6 months of lost academic time in transition. We're having the child continue to participate in activities in the community, whether it's the fall festival, a soccer team, a tennis team, a debate team, a theater group. And also, as we get into our kids that are in high school, we're not looking at partial credits, reduced graduation criteria, immediate enrollment, and careful tracking of their records. So school stability is very, very important for our children that are in care, especially with the movement to reunite families, that a lot of times our resource families are really working towards helping the bio family stabilize so that the child can return to their biological family. School of origin laws. In the early 2000s, many laws were advocated for and passed in the state of California to support foster youth in school stability because of the results of, and really the failing of the system to maintain their education stability. So school of origin, one of those things. A student's school of origin can be the school that they were attending when they went into foster care, the school that the child most recently attended, or a school that the child attended within the last 15 months before they went into care, where they had a connection, lots of peers, good relationships with teachers, perhaps a sports team. And then youth that are transitioning between elementary and middle school and high school have that same school of origin right to remain in their school of origin if it's in their best interest as determined by their educational rights holder. Another reason to know who the educational rights holder is: transportation. In the Every Student Succeeds Act at the federal government, they added transportation as a requirement for both districts and mandated that school districts work with child welfare to determine funding to get students back to their school of origin. In Ventura County, we have a lot of kids coming out of the Oxnard Plain. We have a lot of resources, a lot of resource families in Simi Valley. But since our program is geared at trying to reunify, we want to keep those kids in their schools of origin. So the Ventura County Office of Ed has MOUs and contracts with the districts and child welfare to provide that transportation when no other means is available to get the children back to their school of origin. And if it's in the best interest, to remain in the school of origin. Sometimes the educational rights holder determines that that school may have been a part of the problem and they want to give the children a fresh start at a new campus. Resource parents can also be reimbursed by social services for reasonable transportation expenses and travel expenses to get children back to their school of origin. You'll need to talk to your social worker about that. Enrollment rights. Children in care have the right to attend the local comprehensive school. Foster youth have the right to be educated in the least restrictive environment, very similar to special education students. That means a comprehensive high school. Maybe they were in an alternative education program and they're moving to a new district. They have the opportunity to start out at a comprehensive school before an alternative education program is selected. If they're attending their school of origin, then that isn't it. If their IEP requires a different placement, then that needs to be considered. And like I said before, the educational right holders determines in writing what the student's best interested and if they require a different educational setting. The student also has the right to immediate enrollment, even without required documents. Maybe as the resource parent, you haven't gotten all the documents, birth certificates, all those things, but we want kids in school immediately. So school districts are required to immediately enroll a child when a foster resource parent approaches the school to enroll them. Lots of office managers don't know this and they'll say, no, you have to have this document and this document, and that really isn't the case. Please feel free to call our office, but every single school district does have a foster youth liaison that you can contact if you're getting a hard time by the school you're trying to enroll the child in. The children also have the right to enroll in the same or equivalent classes, even if they're transferring mid-semester. So some schools track education, Algebra 1 in 8th grade, Algebra 2 in 9th grade, Geometry in 10th grade, but the child is a 9th grader and they were taking a geometry class. Just because it's a 10th grade class at the new high school doesn't mean that they can't be enrolled in the same class that they were transferring out of. They also cannot be forced to attend a continuation school, an independent school, or any other alternative setting, even if they had failing grades, are credit deficient, or have had behavioral problems. We want to give them, if they're changing schools, we want them to get a fresh start and kind of a do-over to establish a good educational relationship in the new setting. Records. School district educational records are very important. One of the things that changed in law was allowing the caregiver or the resource parents access, even though they aren't the educational rights holders, to their records so that they can support the student's educational needs and goals. It expands access to educational records by resource parents who are not the educational rights holder for the purpose of monitoring the progress and ensuring that the child has access to proper educational services. If they're in special education, you want to make sure that they're receiving those resource minutes, those speech and language hours that are written in the IEP. Also, it expands the foster child's case plan to include the contact information of that educational decision maker, so that if there is an issue with the school and the resource family, that the educational rights holder can be gotten a hold of and those decisions can be made appropriately. Also, this training is a result of the law, so that resource families would really understand the importance of your involvement in their educational program and some of the things that could impact their educational program as a result of being a foster child. Partial credits. This is addressed with high school students. Oftentimes high school students will find out on Thursday that they're moving to a new placement on Friday. They're right in the middle of a geography class. So it is the requirement of the sending school to give partial credit on that geography class based on the grades on the last day of actual in-seat attendance. So grades through that Thursday need to be calculated. Those need to be sent to the new school, and they have to accept those partial credits and apply them to their graduation. Most classes are 5 units a semester in high school. Most students get 60 units a school year. Students cannot be required to retake a course if it throws them off track for high school graduation. They have the right to enroll in same or equivalent courses. So if they were in a geography class and they move to a new high school, they need to find a class that's very similar or the same to the course that they were in. And they also have the right to take all the A to G courses or retake those courses that other students have the right to take in school. Graduation rights. Foster youth who transfer high school after the second year can graduate by completing a minimum state graduation requirement. If at the time of the transfer, they cannot reasonably complete additional school district requirements within a 4-year high school. So as I said, students usually earn 60 units per school year, which over a 4-year course could be 240 units. A district may require 240 units to graduate from high school. A student who transfers after their second year could only be holding 90 units, which is 30 units shy of what they normally would have completed after the second year. Do you think they could make up those 30 units over the next 2 years? It is required by the receiving school district within 30 days of enrollment to talk to the student about whether they're going to be able to make the appropriate number of units in order to stay within their for her graduation rate. That's AB 216 bill, and accepts to accept the exemption and graduate using minimum state requirements. You can also reject the exemption and graduate using the school district requirements if it is feasible. It also allows foster youth to have a 5th year to complete all the school district requirements, and they can stay in high school for that 5th year even if they turn 19 years old. They can also acknowledge their eligibility for it, but want to defer the decision to a later date. Maybe they want to take some online classes. Maybe when they want to take some classes at the community college to make up those units that they're missing, so they don't have to take the exemption and get those minimum state requirements to graduate. Regardless, we want the youth to graduate receiving a normal high school diploma, and that minimum state credit requirement gives them a normal high school diploma. The educational rights holder or the youth who's over 18 is the one that can determine if they want to use the rights under AB 216. The educational rights holder can change their decision of whether or not to graduate under AB 216 at any time prior to the graduation. So say we get all the way up to, the last semester of school, the students got 220 units, they're turning 18 in April, the district requires 240 units. There's no way they're going to get those last 20 units in order to graduate with their peers. Educational rights holder can requests the state minimum requirement so the student can graduate. The AB 216 diplomas constitute a normal high school diploma and should allow students to fall into priority enrollment categories for military service. So this is a normal high school diploma. The one thing that students need to remember is if they get the state minimum requirement units diploma, they usually can't attend a four-year university. They need to go to a community college to make up those units or those classes that are required at California State and UC schools. And that is all explained to the students and the educational rights holder when the exemption documents are signed. Now, if you have a problem with the school district, and this just doesn't apply to foster youth, this to any student, there is a process called uniform complaint procedures. Complaints from students, educational rights holders, bio parents have to be filed with the local school district. The school district has an opportunity to conduct an investigation, and the complainant or the representative can present evidence to support the allegation, and this can be done over anything, whether it's bullying in the school or non-acceptance of a foster youth grades from a prior school, not getting immediate enrollment. The LEA has 60 days to complete the investigation, prepare a written decision. The districts have to notify the complainant of their right to appeal the LEA's decision to the California Department of Education, and that appeal to the California Department of Education must occur within 15 days of the receipt of the written LEA's decision. Our department is here to help you if there's a problem. Like I said, every single school district has an appointed foster youth liaison in their school district, and that's who you should go to first, but you can always bring it to our office for support since we support all those liaisons in the Ventura County school districts. What is the foster youth liaison role? Their role at each school district is to ensure and facilitate the proper educational placement, enrollment in school, and checkout from school for foster children. They have to assist the foster children when transferring from one school to another or from one school district to another school district to make sure that there's proper transfer of their credits, their grades, their records. In the handbook, there is a page of foster youth liaisons for every school in Ventura County that you can look up. They do change frequently. We already have 4 changes this year or this upcoming school year from last year's liaisons, but all you have to do is contact us and we'll let you know the contact information of that liaison for that school district. So if a child was with Ventura Unified and they're moving to Rio School District, we can let you know who that new liaison is, and oftentimes the liaisons between the 2 districts contact each other and let them know that a new child in foster care is being moved into their district. However, because we talked about school of origin, if a child moved from a Ventura Unified School District into a Rio School District resource home, in reality, we'd want them to go back to their Ventura Unified School in order to have that school continuity continue. So now these are some issues at the state level: local control funding formula and the LCAP. The local control funding formula was how the state changed funding local school districts. We still get funded average daily attendance of students, but the local control funding formula provided additional funds to the school districts so we can create educational equity, knowing that our vulnerable students need additional resources to reach their college and career dreams. So foster youth, English learners, and low-income students all bring additional dollars to the school districts. The local control accountability plan is the plan that every school district develops in collaboration with the stakeholders, which could be foster youth, could be English language learners, and definitely their parents. We create action steps and accountability measures that show how we're using these additional funds to assist those students in foster care, to assist those students that are English language learners, or their students that are low income. Every district plan is posted on the VCOE website, and you can look at it there. In our COVID times, we are developing local learning continuity and attendance plans because the LCAPs were delayed during COVID, but we're all reaching out to stakeholders, and you as a resource parent are a stakeholder in giving us feedback onto what do you think would help our children in care continue their education, benefit from their education, and meet those goals that they have for college and career readiness. Some educational resources. As I said, children are eligible for educational resources the day they're born. Ventura County Early Start provides assessment for concerns related to social, self-help, physical, communication, and cognitive development in children. If they are not meeting their developmental milestones, you can contact through your pediatrician. Our office can help you get a hold of the Early Start team that does that assessment. Remember, the educational rights holder has to give permission for that assessment. From 0 to 3, in-home services are provided to provide physical, occupational, speech therapy, behavioral support, hearing and vision services that children that are presenting these delays. Once they hit the age of 3 and through high school graduation, school districts are responsible for the assessment and services for children with disabilities that might impact their ability to benefit from a general ed or special ed curriculum. An IEP is developed to support those services, to support the student with the services from the special education department, whether it's occupational therapy, speech therapy, resource, intensive behavioral services. The request for assessment must be made in writing to the school, and the educational rights holder must make those. College and career readiness. The foster youth support team makes a point of meeting with every foster youth that's in care, that's a senior in Ventura County, because we want them to complete all the necessary documents for them to reach their college or career goals. There's extensive amounts of scholarships, grants available to foster youth that are graduating. So we have a team of people that go out to all the schools and work with the students to complete their FAFSA, complete their web grant, get their Chafee grants. There's many steps that a senior has to go through in order to get all the stuff that's available to them as they enter school. We also encourage you to look at the Career Education Center. Flyer is also in the booklet. They offer career classes in welding, aviation, medical assistance, agricultural. There's all types of classes that are available either on the campus of the high school that they're attending or at the Career Education Center in Camarillo. Also, the booklet has lots of information on the financial aids, grants, scholarships that are available, and it kind of compares the different foster student supports that are available at colleges. All colleges in Ventura County and also throughout the state have a foster youth liaison that will support them through the college career process and support them as they're going through their college experience. So encourage the youth to find who that foster youth liaison is on their college campus. I think that's it. I'm going to say thank you on behalf of myself, Laura Welburn, and Michelle Odeguera at the Ventura County Office of Education for opening your household to take in these vulnerable youth and support them through their educational program. We are here to help you and support you. And once again, thank you for being a resource parent in Ventura County.
Hi, my name is Jen, and I'm a clinician here at Kids and Families Together. And you may recognize me if you're with us for day 1 and day 2 when we met you on Zoom with my colleague Joanne. And as we stated in day 2, day 3 is one of our favorite days because it's the most impressionable and it really has a long-lasting effect on your journey as a resource family. So today you are going to hear from 3 panelists, and each of them have a different experience with the system of care. And it's important that we listen to their stories and how each of them navigate it, just their personal experiences. And we hope that each of you get something out of this, and then you can tell other people in your life about it as well. So Brian, I am going to start with you. And again, good to see you.
Good to see you.
If you can, just tell us a little bit about how long you were involved with the foster care system and how you came to be involved with them.
I became involved in the system June 1st of 2018. My son was taken from me because I wasn't able to pick him up from school. I was addicted to drugs, and the police had taken him from me, and it took me 18 months to get him back.
Cool, thank you. And Kiana, same question to you, and I'll repeat it because just if you could let us know how long you were involved in the foster care system, and for you, at what age you did come in.
So for me, I first was involved with the foster system when I was 2 years old. I was taken away from my biological parents because they were both using drugs at the time. And at the time I was in Colorado, and then I've been in the system ever since I was 2, and I've been in 34 different placements.
Do you have any siblings, biological siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 6.
6? Okay. Thank you. Brian, so you said in 2018, that's when you got involved with the foster care system. What was your life prior to that?
I was living in Santa Barbara. I was recovering from a drug addiction that I've had since I was 15. I had gotten 9 years clean. I gotten married, and I was doing my recovery thing. I was at the same job for 13 years, and then my now ex-wife started using drugs, and I had to take my son and my daughter and go back to Ventura because I couldn't live with her anymore. And so I moved back to Ventura, and what happened was I was doing fine. I was studying to be a nurse, and I started drinking. I was a single dad, working full-time, going to school full-time, and I had lost my connection to my recovering friends in Santa Barbara. And one thing led to another as I started using drugs, drinking, using drugs, lost my home, pretty much became homeless. And then I was struggling to stay afloat, living in on my car. And even one time losing my car, and me and my son even had to sleep under a bridge one night. But I was struggling between them, and then I wasn't able to pick him up from school. So because my car broke down all the way across town, and I had to skateboard all the way across town. But by the time I got to the school, he was already under the care of the foster system. It took me 18 months to get him back. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I was homeless. I'd lost everything, and now I had lost my son. So I didn't know what to do. But hindsight, being in the system, I just did what was asked of me, and I got myself clean. We got into a rehab, and that's where it started from there to getting my son back. And it took me 18 months to get him back.
Amanda, I know you've been doing this for a while, so it might be hard to think about what life was like before foster care. But we do have a lot of resource families who are watching this and wanting to know, should I do this, right? So what was your life before? And give us the honest opinion.
My husband wanted to be a homeless missionary where he was going to ride his bike around the U.S. And I told him he married the wrong girl. But foster care was a way that he felt like he could still do a ministry, and I was okay with this one. And so we decided that was the avenue we wanted to go to. So we kind of jumped into it full force as newlyweds.
Kiana, coming over to you, I'm going to switch the question because you did come into the foster care at such a young age. From your earliest memory that you'd like to share with us, what was your experience in whichever family's home that you want to talk about? What was that like for you?
My very first foster home, I had no memory of, no recollection of until I was 12 years old. And that was because in that home I was exposed to a lot of abuse, and I guess my brain just kind of blocked it out. Mm-hmm. But the home right after that, the home that I was saved by, I remember that home, and I was there until probably from 2 until 4 years old, 5, until I came to California, because this happened in Colorado. The foster home that I was staying in wasn't, at first it was nice. I came into what seemed like a loving family. They had a son of their own and a nice house and everything, but by the third day, I was being abused again, and I was with 2 of my brothers, my younger brother and my older brother, and when we were pretty young, so we would still wet the bed and stuff, and they would put us in the closet with our sheets that were soiled. That's the main memory that I have from that.
At this point, you said 2 siblings were with you?
Yes.
Do you know where your other siblings were?
I do not. I know that half of them are in Colorado, but my mom was promiscuous. So.
Brian, so many of our families are working with folks who are working through their addiction, right? Coming on recovery.
Yeah.
And a lot of questions we get in class is, what are the parents going through when they come into the system, right? What's in their case plan? What's expected of them? So can you talk a little bit about your first 6 months, and do you remember what you had to do to start to get your son back?
If I was to get my son back, I have to be proactive and do something about it. So I started looking into treatment centers, and while I was living on the streets, I had to call every day, and I called every day to get into this detox center. It was in a place that I could have gone back to Santa Barbara, because I was in the community, recovery community there a lot, but because something told me when I had gotten clean last time, I did a geographical, right? And my family was here in Ventura. So this time I wanted to do something where I got myself in a treatment center in my own town, in the town that I grew up in, because I knew that if I could do it, if I could stay clean in the place where I grew up, I might have had a better chance. Instead of running from my problems this time, I felt like I should face them head on. It took me 60 days, of calling every day, and I got into this place. I finally got into this place, and what started my, things. And I was visiting my son in Children and Family Services, their offices, twice a week. During this whole process, even if I was high, I still showed up. I knew that I had a couple friends that had gotten in the system too, and they helped me. They had gotten their kids back and stuff, so they helped me what I should do. And so I got myself in a treatment facility. I went to a detox. I was visiting my son the whole time. He was going in. He was placed in 3 different placements, and the third placement was a family member. Up in Santa Barbara County. So. What happened was that, and they gave me a clear-cut plan, the judge and Children and Family Services, I need to get parenting classes, I needed to get counseling, I needed some treatment, outpatient treatment, drug testing, all those things. And so I just did all those. I did all those. They had me have a plan. Going through, in the system, at first I was terrified, because I was like, oh, this stuff, how am I going to do it all? Here I am, I have nothing. I was afraid that somebody's going to get my kid that had more money than me, that had, all those things were on my mind, but I did it anyway. Sorry. And I got through it. After I left the treatment center, I got myself into a sober living that would accept my child with me, for visits. And then luckily, by that time, I spent a year in this place. And then my father was getting sick, and I had to move in with him. I moved in with him, but I got my son back, and he's been with me ever since.
I am curious, how old was your son when this happened?
He was 9.
9, okay.
And I was raising him. I raised him pretty much from 18 months till he was 9.
Amanda, coming to you now. As we talk in class, we really want reunification, and that's the primary goal of the agency. So what switched for you all, and what was that process like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like I said, we've been doing this 13 years. So the system was a lot different then. Everything was rule-based, not trauma-based. And so our goal actually was 90% of foster parents. And then we had our third placement was a NEFRM. And we were told from the beginning we were going to adopt him. He was the 8th kiddo for this mama. And my husband and I allowed our own selfish ambitions to kind of lead our decision making and our judgmental attitude, I think is the best way to put it, towards this mom. And in the end, she gave up her rights to 7 other kids. But because we were being selfish and we really wanted to adopt this baby, she was like, no, I'm going to get him back. And so she fought solely for this little guy. And so we had him from birth till 2.5. And at 2.5, he went home. And I always like to tell the story that they're still together. They're still doing good. But it was in that moment where my husband and I kind of had a Hail Mary moment where we realized we were doing it completely wrong. We realized that we put our own selfish ambitions before someone who lost their child, when instead of loving her in that moment and really helping her make the right decision. And so it was in that moment that we decided we're either quitting now because this is the wrong way, or we're going to completely change how we do it. And we decided to change it. And from that moment on, foster parented completely different. We chose to put the birth parent, like, not on a pedestal, but we decided to treat them like a human, I think is a better way to put it. And we didn't see them any less than us. And I think that was the key factor on what made us change our own hearts, was changing how we saw the birth parent and saw the beauty of reunification from that moment on. Like, to see how much better the kids were in the whole scenario, how much better everything else went when the birth parent and the foster parent could team together. So that was the big key that made us switch our focus.
You said the keyword trauma, which is really going to help me transition to Kiana here. I know you were in 34 homes, and it breaks my heart. I know it probably breaks everyone who's watching heart to hear that. Part of the classes now is to teach about trauma, and for us as instructors, we teach about how to work with kids who experience trauma. So is there anything you are able to share with us about how your behavior came out because of trauma, and what did that look like in the home?
Growing up, I was super bad, I would say. Like, I was defiant. I wouldn't like listen. I would talk back to my teachers. There was a lot of things. I would say I was very misguided because I was hurt, and I really felt that no one paid attention to my pain. And as like a small child, I don't think that like I knew how to like express it. And the way that I could express it was like when I was upset, and when I did feel overwhelmed or anxious or whatever the situation may be, I knew that I could get a reaction out of someone by misbehaving. And I would do it a lot. And actually, 34 seems like a big number for placements, but a lot of that had to do with me and my decisions and my choices, because I didn't want to stay in the home. And I knew that if I acted out, that they probably wouldn't want me, because it was just a cycle. And every person that came into my life felt very temporary.
Can you talk a little bit more about the word defiant, and just really hone in on, you said you would talk back to your teachers.
Yeah.
What else?
I have a great story. So I was 11 years old, and I was living in an emergency shelter placement, I guess. It was called Jamison Center in Bakersfield. And there's kids there from like 5 all the way to like 16, 17. And I stayed here for a while. Jamison Center for me was super like normal. Like, every time I would like leave a foster home, I knew that if they didn't have somewhere to take me that night, that they would take me to Jamison Center. So for me, like, I knew that I was gonna get a shower, some food to eat, some clean clothes, and I liked going there for that reason. But also, I did have like a problem with like authority, I guess, like people who wanted to tell me like what to do or how to do it, because one, I was never listened to when I needed help. So I felt that even if I asked for help, that like no one was going to give it to me. And so I don't know how to explain it. Like, I would just, like, I felt like I knew who you were before like you even spoke to me. So I put up this wall, and I wasn't letting you in, and I wasn't like you weren't going to be able to help me because I already didn't like you, you know. It made me very like protective over myself, I would say. Yeah, I was just scared. I was scared of like letting the wrong person in and watching them leave.
Brian, coming back to you, part of the classes is also talking about the partnership between the biological parents and the resource parent. And so much has changed even since you've been in, right? So we're really concentrating on that co-partnership. For you, you said your son, I believe, was in 2 placements prior to going to Relative. Did you have interactions with them, and how did that partnership work, even for a short amount of time?
I met the first one time, and she was nice. She got my phone number, and she'd sent me a picture of him in karate and stuff, and putting him through basketball. You know, a couple of things where I was just like, wow, you know, I got to see that someone really was caring for my son, and was caring about me too. You know, and the second, he went to a group home the second time, and I could tell he didn't like it there. Like it was with a bunch of kids, and they had some regular kids, and he was getting treated differently. You know, there was a couple of things he expressed to me during one of my visits with him. I could just tell his whole persona had changed. He wasn't happy. I could tell right away.
Was there a point in your experience where, because earlier you said you had this idea of what the foster care system was, that someone's just going to take my kid, they have a lot more money. Was there a point where you realized that wasn't the case?
Yeah, there definitely was. I think I was in my rehab center, and the Children and Family Services social worker that was mine was really nice. She showed interest in what I was doing. She made sure to. There was even a time before I even got into the rehab that she had. He was going to go to Lompoc, and which was going to be far away, and I had no way to get there, and there was a lot of obstacles at that point, and I was scared that I was going to lose him to even her, because you know she had her own house, and you know my son's a lovable kid and very charismatic, and I was just terrified someone was going to want him more than me, you know, so to speak, or have the ability to get him taken from me because of what they had and things like that. But she let me see him in a park. You know, she supervised, you know, what she didn't have to do, supervised at a park, so I could actually play with him, you know. And I remember she had a tear. She cried because I was playing my skateboard, you know, and things. And I really realized that the system cared. That at least someone in the system cared about me, and that the things. That's when I kind of knew that things would be okay as long as I was on the right path.
Amanda, I want to keep the same theme with you from the resource parent side. What did the partnership? And I know you have 13 years of span, so you get to choose. What did the partnerships look like for you with the biological families?
I feel like there was like the whole spectrum. I feel like sometimes it's simply just, like Brian said, a phone call, a text picture. I would just kind of gauge where the birth parent was. I feel like a lot of times the relationships would start out small like that, because especially when someone's coming off of drugs and detoxing, they're not ready for a relationship. And so I would have to gauge it, like, because I don't want to jump full force. I'm a big personality, so I don't want to like scare them off as they're trying to detox. But then it's just taking baby steps. I would say it normally starts with a phone call, or one thing I love to do is just go to the visit center. I don't take advantage of the Case-Aids moving the kids from my house to the visit center. So I would go, because that's a super easy, very natural, very organic way to meet the family. And so it's just building. And so, like I said, I had the whole spectrum. So I had little relationships all the way to relationships where the birth parents came over all the time. And I'm not saying everyone should jump into that, because when I say that, I always get multiple new families, like their eyes real big and scared. But you just gauge each parent. I always ask the social worker, is this parent safe? Am I able to have this relationship? Nowadays, that's a lot less of a common question that needed to happen. But only twice in 13 years was I told no. So I feel like that can show how 99% of the time these parents just need a new cheerleader. They need someone in their corner. So often these parents are a victim of their own circumstances. They didn't ever have a family that cheered them on, supported them. And so that's where me and my husband would come from. And so I feel like once we were able to initiate a relationship, I feel like it would organically grow very quickly. Very few times did it not grow, but it was just gauging and like taking it slow until the birth parent was comfortable.
As far as when a case would close and reunification occurred, would you stay in contact with some of the families?
Yeah, for the most part, I would. It's a very natural, not occurrence, but a natural flow that slowly they would take me out of their life. But I always felt good when they would start calling me less, because it meant they were they felt more confident in their parenting. But even now, I still have lots of parents that I have contact with either online or they'll text me every few months. Every time I see them in a store, they run up to me. And so even though I don't have like very, very close contact with all of them, if I run into them, it's always we pick up. But I don't push it once they start backing up, because I feel like that's their growth. They're learning how to do this. They're getting more confidence.
Kiana, coming back with you, the young adult that you are now, are you able to look back and think about what a good resource family would have been for you and what you would have liked to see?
I feel like if I could like choose what my family would be like, I would want a parent who's consistent, as in like not in and out of my life or like my emotions. Someone who doesn't give up on me, because even though they're telling me that they're here for me and that they're there to help me and stuff, a lot of families have told me that, and it wasn't always the case. And for a while, I was very like I don't know what the word is, like giving, or I don't know, like I was open, like I didn't have my wall up, because my social worker, one of my social workers that I had told me that it was my fault that I was going through so many homes, and that it was because that I make it impossible for the family to love me, because that I talk back, and you know I used to talk back, and like I don't mean like tell me to clean my room and I say no, like no, I would wait for information like about the family, and like I would wait until I knew like it was gonna hurt them, and then I would say it. I would say anything hurtful, anything, because I wanted to hurt them before they could have the chance to hurt me. And I really wish that someone could have just seen past that and seen that I was scared and that I was hurt and that I was broken, and that I seen like I wasn't dumb, you know, like I knew how it was supposed to be to have a mom. Like I knew that the people who were supposed to take care of me weren't supposed to treat me like that, and like they just treated me like I was so dumb, like I was just clueless. And I really just wish that like they were patient, because it just took the right person to just show me love. Even after I like, you know, even after I said mean things to them, they stayed around, and it showed me that, you know, people are here to like stay, and not everybody's temporary. And it really changed my look on like pretty much my entire life, my situation and everything. So I feel like if I had that at a young age, maybe 5, you know, when I came to California, that I wouldn't have struggled so much growing up.
Brian, coming back to you, when you reunified with your son, what was that transition like? And then what were the first few weeks or months like for you guys?
It was pretty fluid. I mean, once the judge put down the gavel, I mean, like, it was a freeing experience. I know my son was happy. I was happy. I mean, everybody was happy. It took a lot of work, and, you know, it took a little bit longer because his mom was having a little bit more trouble, you know, but she was being honest about it and came clean, you know, that kind of thing. And it was just, you know, and me and his grandmother, which was my wife's mom, my ex-wife's mom, have a really close relationship, you know, so that made it easier, you know. I know that nobody raises their hand, you know, says, I want to be an addict, or no child raises their hand and says, I want my parents to be an addict, you know. and so it's an ongoing process that it's just continues to grow, and I'm so grateful that the system is changing. Like even in the short period that I've been with them, since I came on as an ambassador and stuff like that, like it's just to see the county doing something, going that extra step, that extra mile, and some of the resource families that are coming up that I'm hearing that are stepping up and really caring about people is going to make all the difference. I mean, I know me when I first got in the system, I was terrified, and as I start to see that people actually cared, and it wasn't just we're taking your son from you and there's nothing you can do about it. Like you had your chance and now it's over. It doesn't have to be that way, and I think, me as recovering from addiction and stuff, like all I just wanted was someone to care, and it's not always easy when you have all the weight of your world on your shoulders to find the help that you need, when you're having to worry about a child as well, like what's going to happen to them, it can really put you in a stasis where you're not really getting the help that you should.
Is there anything else that you want resource families that are watching to know about folks who struggle with addiction?
To not give up on them, and I think it's important, and I like what she had to say. The children especially, need as much help as we do, and as long as the resource families, it's just, it's not hard to love us, as recovery addict. I think most people that struggle with addiction have been running from something from their past for a long time, and they're just afraid to express it because of the fear of judgment and the stigma that comes along, because nobody raises their hand to be an addict. I think most of us are running from something, from our pasts, and from trauma especially, that it's not over, and there can be change, and under the right circumstances, if the community, once the community comes together and sees that they can do something, which they can, and as a resource family, that you can save a life. Not only can you save a child's life, but you can save a human life, of the parents, just showing that you care.
All right, Kiana, I want to come to you for one last question, and then after that, what we're going to do is hear from some other guests here who might have additional questions. So can you just give us insight of what your life looks like now?
So now I am 19 years old, independent. I'm living on my own. I went through a lot to get to where I am now. I wasn't always independent. I felt like I was too afraid to do things on my own. But actually I got a lot of, once I got older and once I got out of Bakersfield, once I moved to Ventura, my life changed a lot, and I had a lot more support. I had big brother. I had a big sister. I had a lot more support. I had people telling me things for coping skills. I had people helping me with job applications, things that I didn't know how to do yet, like fill out a job application, or just a lot of different things.
Thank you for all your honesty and your vulnerability and all the answers that you've given us so far. We really appreciate it. I just have a few questions that when somebody is coming into being a new resource family with Homes with Heart VC, they do have some questions about deal breakers. And I just wanted to ask you about, what is it like to discover your deal breakers? Do you have them in advance? And how do you work with deal breakers? And do you personally have any?
So, yes, that's a really good question. So for us, we do have deal breakers, and our deal breakers came from experience and also how much education we have. Our only absolute deal breaker was we weren't willing to take a known child that had sexual abuse only because we felt like we didn't have the tools equipped to help them, not because we were scared of it, not because of any prejudice, but just because we didn't feel equipped to take them. But then as the years went by, we started to like change kind of our deal breakers based on our own children's needs in our house. One other thing I would suggest, kind of going on that same line, is that you make a list of questions you want to ask placement before placement calls you, and then also talk about your deal breakers with your significant other, because placement doesn't have time for you to say, oh, hang on, let me call my husband. Oh, hang on, I need to pray about it. Oh, hang on. Like, placement needs to know, can you take this child or not, especially in emergency situations. So we always have a list of questions, have a list of our deal breakers, and have a list of what we're willing to take and that we've already pre-asked.
So that was my second question, was do you have questions that you ask when you get the call from Homes with Heart?
I like had it written down so I knew to ask, and I always suggest that to other foster parents, because especially if you're new, you're nervous, you're excited, you forget everything in the moment. So write down your questions so you have them ready. So my list is, like I said, do they have lice? And then the next question is, do they have siblings? Where are these siblings? Why are they not being placed with siblings? Are there relatives? Are the relatives, did they already put in their paperwork? When's the first, or will there be an FTM immediately? Are the birth parents safe? What do we know? Give me as much information on the case. And then anything that this placement may have, they might not, but like likes, dislikes, allergies, always ask about allergies or medication, because if placement's calling with the social worker out on the field, they can text or call that social worker right away and say, ask the birth parent if there's any food allergies, if there's any known medical conditions, because more times than not, I will get a kid, as soon as I start that relationship with the birth parent, they're like, oh yeah, they're supposed to be on steroids for asthma and they have to take their albuterol every 3 hours. Well, no one told me that. So this kid's gone so-and-so weeks without that. So ask as many questions about health, about, what school they go to, if they're school age, and if they want them to stay at that school, what transportation will be provided if it's especially in a different city. I think that's most of my list.
Anything surprising about Homes with Heart and contact with them? Anything that surprised you about how it works, how the foster care system works?
I would say still to this day, 13 years later, what surprises me is how many people there are. I think that it's a big learning curve. It's not a bad learning curve. It's just a good learning curve of learning the difference between caseworkers and social workers and lawyers and everybody that cares for that child, and are part of the team, but you might not fully understand it. And so I think that's always surprising.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you. I know it's not easy telling your stories, but my first question is for Brian. Brian, meeting resource or Homes with Heart resource parents for the first time, what was one thing that made you feel like they were part of your team?
The first person my son was placed with, I met her at a CFT, and she had gotten my phone number and stuff like that, and she'd sent me a picture of my son doing karate and a couple other things, and texted me like how he was doing and stuff. And I think that was the first, at that moment I knew that, okay, this person cares about what I might be thinking or might be feeling or might be missing. I actually felt like, okay, I don't have to worry. There's people that care about me and him. They're doing something for him, and they're kind enough to send me a picture or something, allowing me to see that he's thriving, he's doing good. And I think that was the most important thing for me.
My other question is for Amanda. Knowing all the experience that you have and going in to being a Homes with Heart resource parent as a newlywed without being a parent, and parenting all these children, some going home, some staying with you. What do you think? Do you think that helped you become a parent to your children? Like, parenting children that are other people's families and helping that family come together. Do you think that made an impact on how you see yourself as a parent?
Yes, for sure. I would say our entire parenting journey was shaped around foster care and becoming a resource parent. It gave us tools that we probably wouldn't have had we just jumped into biological children. It gave us a lot more resources and a lot more patience and even thankfulness. I feel like watching our kids go through so much, like, it gave me a different sense of gratefulness than I feel like most parents have.
Speaking of the Homes with Hearts, VC, and everything that they offer, one thing that we talk about in class is all the resources and help, not just for the children, but for you as well. Can you speak a little bit about what you found most useful?
Anytime I meet a new foster parent, I always tell them, find people in the same season as you. Find other foster parents, other resource parents, because you're going to need that support and you're going to want to cling to someone who understands. Our county luckily has some of the best resources. We have amazing support groups, we have mentors, and then we also just have a very large foster care community. And so just finding those people and sticking with them, I feel like has been the best way to not move forward, but find community and then also get resources and help.
So Kiana, Amanda, Brian, I mean, thank you so much. Some of you I meet more than once, and I appreciate every time I get to spend with you. And some of you I meet maybe a few times, and same thing. I just love hearing all your stories and all your bravery and strength. So thank you. So on behalf of Homes with Hearts Ventura County and Kids and Families Together, thank you for joining us today. All right, so this is really hard being virtual with you during a moment where I know Joanne and I love to debrief about what we just heard. What did you experience while listening and hearing questions being asked from the panel and how the panel answered them? What was it like for you to hear their experience? I feel so bad. You know, Joanne and I are advocates for taking in teenagers, and this is probably one of the moments in class where people say, I want to take in a teenager. You're hearing a lot about experiences at that teenage age. So really, I know we can't be there to discuss this with you and debrief, but I really want you to keep their stories with you, right? Keep this experience with you and go talk about it after you're done with us. Keep thinking, okay, what am I going to do in that resource family's shoes, especially with the biological parent story and the aged out youth? What are you thinking right now? How are you going to help? So with that, you probably heard from the stories a lot about transitions. And this is such a major part of a child's experience. When I hear transition, I always talk about the transitions also that happen in your home on a daily basis when they're with you. How are we preparing the child for the transitions in and out of the home when they're going to visitations? What does the transition back look like? So everything you see about transitions on this slide, they're already taking risk by coming into your home. They're already taking risk each time they go to visitations with their parents, right? So you're already seeing this. And what does it look like when they reunify? What does it look like when they might go to a permanent option that's not your home, right? And Joanne's going to break those down in a second, but they're taking this risk again, right? And that's why their time with you is so crucial, because you get to teach them what healthy attachment looks like, right? They allow themselves to depend on someone else. I mean, obviously we have an age range of 0 to 18 that might be placed with us. Even at 17 and 18, they still need to depend on us. You cannot take that for granted, right? But when they're transitioning out of your home, they're really putting themselves out there again and having faith and hope that that adult caregiver is going to care for them, is going to be dependable. And that attachment of building the safe zone, right? You have done such a great job. I know you will do a great job of building a safe zone around this child, right? So when they transition into kind of maybe this unknown again, even if it's reunification with the parents, things have changed, right? And obviously we're reunifying because things have changed for the better. But what do you think might be in that child's back of their mind about taking that risk and reunifying, right? It might be kind of that little elephant in the room of, are things going to go back to the way they were? Right? So how do you teach those skills? How are you teaching those skills that the child transitions and is able to still use those coping skills, is able to continue to self-regulate when they're not in your care? And the goal was that we're co-parenting, right? So the parent even knows now how to work with those coping skills. how to bring them out, how to draw out those strengths. So just keep thinking about this every time the child's transitioning in and out of your home. How does that look like with giving the child space? How does that look like to help that child cope? And then what does it look like when they're transitioning out of your home altogether? Child might experience a loss of control. Here it is again, their life. They don't have any decision making. And obviously we're doing it for safety of them, but just think about it in a child's brain right now. I have to move again with or without my stuff and go rely on another adult that may or may not be my parents. Loss of the familiar. I know all of you are going to do a great job of welcoming this child into your home, making them part of your family, right? Celebrating them. And now they have to change again, right? So now they have to lose something. And although it might seem like they're gaining something, they're losing that loss of familiar with you. Traumatic loss, right? We talk about this when children are coming into our home. Even when there's relief, kids still are losing something when they come into your home. They're losing all those connections that we've talked about before. Loss of things and belongings. This is a sensitive subject in the foster care system because sometimes we think of material things as not important. But think about a child when they're coming into your home and they come in with just a backpack and you can't go back in and get anything else in their home, right? So that's all they have is the clothes on their back, the things maybe in their backpack if they have one, and they lose all those things. Maybe something was part of their identity, a favorite toy, a stuffed animal, their belongings, their home, right? Their routine. They're losing all that when they come into your home. And then again, when they transition out of your home, right? So start thinking about what kind of transitional pieces you could provide for this child. What are some transitional pieces you can have that the child can remember the good times with you, or just remember that you're part of their life, right? A lot of times in class, we talk about making a scrapbook, right? This life book, this idea of a scrapbook that goes with the child, especially so the parents can see everything they did with you, not just schoolwork, but fun artwork, coloring books, pictures. It also helps you, right? I want you to think about you and your family. How are you going to help you and your family with the transition? Especially with the pictures. Maybe you want to hang on to a few pictures that you guys have had together. And then again, the loss of routines. We talked so much about structure, introducing a child into new routines. Well, now they have to go back and learn another transition, another routine. And again, even if it's reunified with the parents, we hope that routine looks different, right? It should. It's going to be healthier, right? So the family is going to be learning these routines all together. But children are at the core of experiencing this in their mind and in their heart.
So looking a little bit more at these types of big transitions, Jen mentioned, there's little transitions throughout the day and the week that you'll also be helping children with. And that all the things she mentioned can make something as simple as, hey, you're leaving school early and going to the doctor. That can be a rough transition for a child who's experienced so much disruption that any change can feel unsettling. It can trigger some anxiety for them. But for this, we're going to focus on these bigger transitions. So with reunification, what are the things that can make reunification a little bit more of a struggle for a child? All the stuff that we already touched on impacts this. So what are the ways that you can try and balance some of those things out? So a really key piece that Jen was tapping into a little bit there is the child may feel like, has my parent really changed, and are these changes going to stick? So you being an ongoing part of the child's life is something that can help balance that out. One of the things where I like to come back to thinking about children's rights, and that you have to have the rights posted in your home, that if a child's going to transition out of your home, you making sure that they understand their rights is protective. It's a way that you can really empower kids, that whether it's reunification or any of these other transitions, that they really know their rights. They know if something inappropriate maybe is being done, and they're still going to have a social worker for a period of time before their case closes, even with reunification. And so they're still going to have resources. They're going to have you, they're going to have the social worker, they might have a CASA, the court appointed special advocate. They're going to have folks that they can let them know if reunification isn't working out, if something, that maybe looks okay on the surface, deep down isn't quite working. So we want to have those kind of safety measures in, that the child believes people are really going to listen to them, and that they know what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate. but it's also about supporting the parent as they go through this reunification. So when we think to the case study with Birdie and her dad, and we talked a bit about how you might kind of co-parent and support dad and Birdie together in one of the other classes. So thinking about that piece of, we've got a teenager whose dad has had issues with drug abuse. He's finally going through rehab. He's got an apartment for the first time. Birdie's maybe getting her first room, and she gets to successfully reunify with dad. And so how you might help her with that transition. So thinking about these things of, okay, we've got a 13-year-old, they like to decorate their own room. Can she be a part of that process? In the case study, the dad is he's willing to partner, and he's doing well with his case plan. So he's somebody that, depending on your comfort level, potentially you could do shopping together, or you could take Birdie to the new apartment and help her decorate, or maybe you'd go do the shopping, help Birdie find things, and then she and dad get to decorate and do the room. So there's this piece where you're really supporting the reunification, showing Birdie that you're excited for her, and at the same time helping her kind of plan and get this reunification figured out in her own mind as well. One of the pieces that can happen with reunification is that kids may kind of backslide or revert back to some old behaviors. So part of that can just be the anxiety of the potential move coming up. It gets them a little bit more dysregulated, so you see some things come back. Another piece can be, well, I'm leaving you, and rejection doesn't feel good, and so I'm just going to reject you first. And so they may start acting like, you know what, I don't care about you, I'm fine, I'm going back to dad, I'm all good, I don't need you anymore. And recognizing that that's probably not really true deep down. That even if they're saying that on the surface, it doesn't mean this child doesn't care about you or doesn't appreciate what you did. It may just mean that they're trying to protect themselves, that they feel like, well, you're going to let go of me, so let me just let go first. And that reminder that neither one of you has to let go. We really want you to stay in the child's life. We want you to stay connected. And with reunification, they can have family maintenance for anywhere from 6 months to an additional year afterwards. And so there may really be a nice long period of time where you still have social workers involved who would support you staying involved in the child's life. Now with this case study with Birdie, her dad's a single dad. So then there's those options of maybe Birdie spends time with you occasionally when dad has to work, or maybe she gets a night out with you every now and then. Maybe dad has to go on a business trip or do work training. And so you can really be trying to support this single dad in raising a young woman. And if you happen to be, a woman caregiver, then you might be able to help dad out with some big things that come up for 13-year-old girls. So thinking about, some of the anxiety and stress that a child may experience as reunification is coming up, but they're also excited. And you showing that you support them being with their parent, and at the same time you care about them and you'll miss them, that you can be sharing these mixed ideas all at the same time, that all these things are true. So it's okay for the child also to have these same mixed feelings, that I love you and I'm going to miss you, but I'm also really happy that I'm leaving because I'm happy to go back to mom and or dad. So helping kids see that that's all okay to have those things. Lots of communication will help with that. So relative placement, the second one is sometimes we have kids are removed and they immediately go into a relative placement. What we're talking about here, though, is that quite often relatives aren't ready. Maybe they're not licensed yet. Maybe that's why you're here, is you're getting licensed so that you can bring a relative into your home, but they've already been placed in an unmatched resource family home or foster home. So sometimes that's the transition, is they're going from a foster placement into a relative placement. Depending on how close you were, how much contact you got to have with this child, if they know you, if they've spent time in your home, that's going to make this easier, but it's still different to go from visiting grandma to living with grandma. So kind of like some things Jen mentioned about, routines and stuff might look different with a family that reunifies. If I'm aunt or uncle or grandma, and I'm going from my relative spending a weekend with me to living with me, the rules are going to change a little bit. My rules are a little bit more strict if you live with me all the time than if you're just here for the weekend. So that's all things that you may be adapting to, the child may be adapting to. And then a lot of these other factors still come into play. Just the child knowing that there's a transition coming up, they may be anxious. So you really partnering with the other resource family. Really work with them, get connected. If you haven't been in the child's life a lot, or maybe you haven't been able to be in contact with them recently, then there should be a plan to maybe have dinners together, have some overnights, and really gradually transition into this relative placement so that the child really feels comfortable with you. Then looking at the third one, independent living. So as kids approach 18 and they're looking at moving into adulthood, so it is up to the youth to decide whether or not they want to participate in the AB 12 extended foster youth services. So that would allow them to be getting support and services until they're, I think up until like the end of their 21st year. So this is something where they don't have to leave your house just because they turned 18. It's really going to be between you, the social worker, and the now young adult to figure out what works best. They might want to go to college. They might want to go to live at an apartment. At 18, the foster funds are going to start coming to the youth. And so they can use that to pay rent, they can use that to be paying for college, to be paying for other needs and necessities. So they still can be living with you while they do that. Again, it's just all a matter of you guys figuring out what works. Do you want to stay connected? Do you want the child to stay there? Even if they do move out, again, thinking about what are ways that you could stay connected. So maybe they decide that they're ready to be completely independent, but they are going to do AB 12. They're going to be going to college. Well, when I went to college, I got to come home every now and then for weekends, or I got to come home for holidays or special events. So making a plan for those things before a child leaves your home. Talk about those things. Is that something that is going to be available to them? Depending on the college, a lot of times dorms close down over holidays and summer. And so they're going to need a place to stay. Is it going to be just like any other kid turning 18 in your home and they get to come back? Or is it going to have to work out differently? And some of that may depend on whether you're going to continue fostering. That if you continue fostering, maybe their bed is not always available. So having that communication, that maybe you stay connected, you stay a support, but if you move, if something happens, that specific bed may not always be available, but can you still be available? And then we have in a different class, we talk more about independent living and all the preparation for that. So right now we're really just thinking about ways to ease that transition. Help them gather paperwork, help them make plans, help them identify all the important connections in their lives. And you just really try and make sure you're still in there as a connection. So the last two, adoption and guardianship. So we're really thinking of that as this is a child that's in your care for either reunification wasn't offered or it was not successful. And so now you're looking at moving into adoption or guardianship. Typically it means that the child will transition to a new social worker, that you'll get a permanency department or an adoption social worker. And so they can really help you with understanding adoption versus guardianship. At any point, when you're talking about permanency and looking towards the future, you can ask social workers to explain a little bit more about the two options. What are the benefits? Again, we're going to focus more just on this idea of this transition. So even though a child has been living in your home, may have been living with you for a year, there's a difference. It might be mainly symbolic, but there is a difference that now I'm claimed, I'm really a part of this family. I often think about folks getting married that they may have dated for a long time, they might have been living together, but suddenly you're engaged, you're getting married, and our expectations of each other shift a little bit. I had somebody who actually said, well, there's things I was fine with in a boyfriend, but I can't accept in a husband. And so as soon as she got engaged, all of a sudden she started getting really mad at her partner because he wasn't fitting her expectations of a husband. So I think a common thing that, for a caregiver, if you're going into adoption or guardianship, is suddenly you're thinking about this child's future in a new way. I'm the one who's going to be there for their entire future. I'm the one who's looking at getting them into college or getting into adulthood. I'm the one who's going to be there. So some of your expectations might shift a little bit and just kind of being prepared. You might also see a shift in the child where, again, there's some anxiety around, is this really going to happen? Is it really going to happen? But then once it happens, there's a certain number of kids that kind of relax into it of like, it's done. There's no more uncertainty. I'm here, I'm staying here. We finally know what's going to happen. There's no questions in my future the way there were before. And so you may have a child really kind of settle in a different way, but you're likely to see some anxiety coming up to that point. And then especially if there's, for the child, any feeling of betrayal to their parents, that I didn't get to reunify and I'm being adopted by somebody else, or I'm going into guardianship and am I betraying or letting down my parents in some way? So they may be struggling with some of that turmoil that comes up. So we've touched on a lot of these things that can help in terms of creating this healthy transition. So I'm just going to add a couple more points. So I mentioned communication, that's a huge piece. One of the things with communication is really trying to get the buy-in of some other family members. So whether you're a relative or a non-relative, if the biological parents, if they can talk to the child about upcoming transitions and can kind of help the child accept where they're at right now. So it might be, hey, we're going to reunify, but it's going to take a while. Maybe it's still a couple months away, and they can talk to the child about that. Or they can be talking to the child about, hey, you know what? You're with these folks for right now. I'm taking care of myself. Just really embrace being there. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to be with them. So this obviously is going to depend on how well that biological parent can partner with you. But really trying to both talk to kids about transitions, but can you get some other important figures in their life to help them talk about these transitions? Creating a transition plan. So this incorporates a lot of things, calling child and family team meetings so that everybody comes together to create a plan, and talking to the child about what do they need, what do they think this is going to look like, what are they afraid of. So again, it really starts with that communication piece, that's what you can pull from to create this transition plan. Thinking about sending all their belongings with them, talking about the physical move. Sometimes it can, rotate around thinking about ideas of how am I literally going to transition this child? That who's going to transport? Who's going to pick up? What's going to be the easiest thing for this child? Some kids, it may matter to them if I drop the child off, I'm kind of giving them up versus somebody coming and claiming them and embracing them. And that can look different in different scenarios. It just, again, depends on relationships. If there's a little bit of conflict between you and the bio parent, you transporting them to the parent's house can almost be a way of giving a little bit of like, I consent to you doing this. I'm taking you to them. I'm sending the message that I support it by doing that. But also looking at if this is a relative you can work with or a biological parent you can work with, can you have some transition time? So whoever's picking up or dropping off, we spend 15 minutes and we chat and we hang out for a few minutes so that it's not just drop and run, but there's a little bit of transition. It's kind of a warm handoff. And that can tie into this third point of helping kids adjust to losses. These warm handoffs can do that, staying connected. And then telling the truth is a piece that we always like to highlight of when kids are little, you have to find age-appropriate ways to tell them the truth, but really just about what's happening. If one of their parents has gone to jail, don't make up stories that they're on a business trip or they're just traveling. Just be honest, but find age-appropriate ways to talk about it. And again, we say this throughout the entire class, through all the classes, resources, get connected. Social workers, clinicians, we will all help you figure out how to have those conversations. So thinking about things like that, of telling them the truth. Once a child is around 12 years old, they really can handle the full truth. So all of that can help. Jen mentioned things like creating the scrapbook. And I love the idea of, the child has one and you have one, and you can say, look, we've both got the same pictures we're going to be looking at. So they've got one to take with them. I've also had folks that they were helping a child transition to a setting like a group home. And so they kept a copy of everything just in case anything got lost. Because, we just know that unfortunately sometimes when kids are transitioning to new placements, whoever's there may not be able to keep track of everything as well as we would like them to. So if you're planning to stay in child's life, maybe you can just keep some copies of things and you've got them as kind of a backup. And that would help reduce the amount of loss that child's going through. But a really key piece is you. Hopefully within a week you can reach out, see the child, call the child, be in touch with them pretty quickly. And that lets the child know that you haven't let go of them, you're not rejecting them, you haven't forgotten them, that you still care about them and you're still in their life. So the next step, as always, if you haven't done this yet, make sure you're calling the RFA number. So this is that number we've given you a couple times. And check in, make sure your application is getting submitted. We want you to have that application submitted before your last class so that you get credit for all these classes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoyed day 3.